I didn't expect her to be there when I came home. The suitcase by the door was the first thing I noticed, worn leather, the kind that looked like it had been everywhere and back. My wife had mentioned a friend staying over, just in passing, but I hadn't thought about it until that moment. Then I heard her voice in the kitchen. Low, steady. Not rushed like most people spoke when they were catching up. I stood in the hallway longer than I should have, keys still in my hand, before I walked in. She was leaning against the counter, laughing at something my wife had said. Her hair was a little out of place, like she hadn't fixed it since the drive, and she held her coffee with both hands like it was the only warm thing anchoring her. Mid-40s, maybe. She looked at me, and for a second, it felt like she was measuring how much space I took up in the room. Hey, I managed, voice too small. You must be Daniel, she said. Her smile was quick, but not careless. Like she gave it away on purpose. I nodded, shrugged off my jacket, tried to remember how to stand. My wife kept talking, pulling her friend into another story, and I sat down at the table without meaning to. The next morning, I found her in the living room. The curtains were half open, daylight spilling in. She had a book resting against her knees but wasn't reading it. Just staring at the page, thumb tucked inside to hold her place. Coffee? I asked, because it was all I could think to say. She looked up, a little startled, then nodded. In the kitchen, I poured 2 mugs. She followed, bare feet quiet on the floor. She didn't say much, just noticed things. The chipped handle of the mug I handed her. The faint crack in the tile near the stove. She had that kind of silence that wasn't empty, but deliberate. You always wake up this early, she asked finally. Habit, I said. I don't sleep much. She tilted her head, not in pity, but like she was filing it away. By the 3rd day, I realized I was waiting for her to be in the room. Not looking for her, exactly, just noticing the spaces when she wasn't there. Little things started to catch me. The way she folded napkins after using them, precise like each one mattered. The way she paused before answering, eyes flicking toward the window as if she had to borrow words from outside. Once, I caught her humming under her breath while drying a plate. Something soft, not quite a song. I stopped what I was doing, just to hear it. She noticed. Smiled without looking at me. At night, after my wife had gone to bed, I'd sit on the couch pretending to watch TV. My phone would glow in my hand, half-written texts I never sent. To old friends, to nobody in particular. She'd pass by sometimes, heading to the guest room, and there'd be this pause at the doorway. Like we both knew something lingered but neither of us would name it. On the 4th evening, it happened. I was rinsing a glass when my phone buzzed. A new message. Not from who I expected. Her. Can we talk? Just those 3 words. Nothing more. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, glass still in my hand, water running cold over my wrist. That was the moment I realized, whatever she was going to say, it would change something I couldn't undo. Her text sat on my phone all night. I didn't answer. The words kept circling though, like they had nowhere else to go. Can we talk? The next morning, I found her at the table, a mug between her hands. My wife had already left for work. The house was too quiet. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her, pretending it was nothing unusual. You didn't sleep, she said softly, eyes on the steam. I almost asked how she knew, but I didn't. Instead, I just shrugged, tracing the rim of my mug with my thumb. You get that look, she added, like your mind won't shut off. It was the kind of observation that didn't come from politeness. She was actually watching me. Later that day, she offered to help me fix the loose hinge on the back door. I didn't need help, but I didn't tell her that. She stood nearby, holding a small flashlight even though it was daylight, as if her presence made the task matter more. You remind me of my son, she said suddenly. The words made me pause, screwdriver slipping slightly. I glanced up. Her face tightened, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. He's older than you, she continued quickly, eyes dropping. But sometimes, when you concentrate like that, she stopped. Shook her head. I tightened the hinge, pretending not to hear the stumble in her voice. Pretending I wasn't suddenly aware of the years between us. That night, I replayed it in my head. You remind me of my son. It should have ended things right there, pulled me back into reality. Instead, it tangled something deeper. I caught myself imagining things I shouldn't, what it would be like if she lived here permanently, what mornings might feel like if the silence wasn't filled with waiting. I hated myself for thinking it, but the thoughts didn't ask for permission. The next evening, she found me in the living room. I had tea cooling beside me, untouched. She sat at the other end of the couch, folding her legs under herself like she belonged there. My marriage didn't work out, she said after a while. The words landed heavy, not rehearsed. I stayed longer than I should have. Out of habit, maybe. Or fear. I turned my head. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They stayed fixed on the wall, as if the story was safer told to the paint. I'm sorry, I said quietly. It was a useless response, but it was all I had. She finally looked at me then, and something in her expression, not sadness, not hope, something in between, made me forget how to breathe. The clock ticked too loudly. My tea had gone cold. She reached over, almost absently, and straightened the cuff of my sleeve. Her fingers brushed my wrist, light, unthinking. It lasted less than a second. But it stayed longer than it should have. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The sleeve touch should have faded by morning, but it didn't. It kept replaying, tucked under the rhythm of everything else. By the third week, the house felt smaller. I noticed it in details, the way I could sense when she was nearby before I saw her. The sound of her chair scraping the floor. The way she hummed when she thought no one was listening. One evening, she sat on the edge of the porch, knees drawn up, the sky just starting to turn. I stepped out without thinking, hands shoved into my pockets. You always come out here when it gets quiet, I said. She smirked faintly. Habit. Her hair shifted in the breeze, catching the last light. I wanted to say something else, anything, but the words kept circling without landing. Instead, I sat beside her. Too close, maybe. Daniel, she said after a pause. My name sounded different in her voice, like she was testing it, not just saying it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. Never mind. That silence hurt more than anything she could have said. Inside, the air smelled faintly of detergent. My wife was moving about, humming as she folded laundry at the dining table. We passed through the space like shadows, each carrying something unsaid. Could you hand me that towel? My wife asked her friend casually. She reached for it, but her hand brushed mine first. Just the lightest graze, but enough to make me forget the rest of the room. I pulled back too quickly, pretending to adjust my grip. She caught the shift, eyes flicking to mine, just for a second, then gone. The interruptions began to pile. A phone ringing at the wrong moment. My wife walking in with a story, breaking whatever thin current had started to run between us. The weight of it was unbearable, because it meant we were already too close to something neither of us had named. Late one night, she knocked lightly on the frame of the living room doorway. I muted the TV, though I hadn't been watching. Couldn't sleep? I asked. She shook her head. Her eyes lingered on mine, steady, then faltered toward the floor. She sat down beside me on the couch. Not far, right there. The clock ticked. The house breathed around us. Daniel, she started again. Voice softer than I'd heard it. Sometimes the door upstairs opened. My wife's footsteps creaked down the hall. We both froze. She pulled back just slightly, her shoulder brushing away from mine. When my wife entered the room, her friend was already reaching for the throw blanket, draping it across her lap like she'd been there all along. "Couldn't sleep either?" my wife asked with a smile. Her friend smiled back, "Practiced, perfect." Something like that. But as our eyes met over the rim of the blanket, there was the faintest trace of what almost slipped through. A near confession. A line we hadn't crossed. Not yet. It was a Thursday evening when it cracked. Not with shouting or some grand reveal, just a walk around the block. She had suggested it, said the air might help clear her head. I agreed too quickly. The street was quiet, the kind of stillness you only notice when you're trying not to speak. Porch lights glowed, sprinklers clicked on and off, the faint smell of cut grass lingered. "You don't talk much," she said finally, not accusing, just observing. "I do," I said, then immediately shook my head. "No. I guess not." She gave a small smile, like she'd expected that answer. Her hands were tucked into her sleeves, shoulders a little hunched against the cooling air. Halfway down the block, she stopped. Just like that, stopped walking. "What?" I asked. She stared at the pavement. "I shouldn't. It's not fair." Her voice broke in the smallest way, almost too soft to catch. I waited, but she didn't move. The quiet pressed in until I had to fill it. "Not fair to who?" She looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, there wasn't a wall between us. "To her. To you. To me." She gave a short laugh, not out of humor but self-defense. "Take your pick." I wanted to say something back, to deny it, to close the gap between us, but the truth was pulsing too loud in my chest. She saw it. "I catch myself," she began, then stopped. Swallowed hard. "You remind me what it's like to be noticed." The last word trembled out, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to use it. I felt something sharp twist inside me. Not triumph, not pity, something messier. "You think I don't notice you?" I said. My voice was rougher than I meant. She blinked, startled by the edge in it. Then her mouth opened, shut, opened again. "That's the problem." We stood there, nothing moving but the leaves above us. She gripped her sleeves tighter, as if to hold herself together. "You're too young," she whispered finally. "And I'm too, me." Her eyes searched mine then, wide and unsteady, like she was asking for something without knowing how. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. Close enough to see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her breath caught unevenly. My hand almost lifted. Almost. I clenched it instead. "I don't know what you want," I said quietly. It wasn't a challenge, just a plea. Her lips parted, but no answer came. Only silence. The kind of silence that feels like standing on the edge of something you can't climb back from. That's where we left it, on the sidewalk under the dim glow of a street lamp. Her question unasked. My answer unfinished. Both of us waiting for the other to step over first. The next morning, she was gone. Not from the house, her suitcase was still by the guest room door, but from me. She moved differently. Kept herself busy, always with something in her hands. Folding laundry that didn't need folding. Rearranging the fruit bowl. Talking more to my wife than to me, her laugh pitched just a little higher, like she was performing in a room I couldn't enter. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But by the third day, it felt deliberate. One evening, she didn't join me on the porch. I waited, phone in my pocket, rehearsing questions I never sent. The glow of the kitchen window lit her silhouette, moving back and forth, never looking out. By the time I gave up and went inside, she was already in her room. The door closed. It was on a Saturday afternoon that the truth slipped out. My wife and her friend were talking at the table, voices low, but not low enough. "Have you heard from him?" my wife asked. Her friend paused. "No. Not in months. He doesn't want that kind of relationship anymore." Her tone was steady, but I caught the crack in it. "Still," my wife said gently, "he's your son. He'll come back around." I froze halfway up the stairs. Son. The word lodged itself in me. It explained everything, the way her face had tightened when she said I reminded her of someone, the flicker of guilt that never left her eyes. She had a son, older than me. That night, I couldn't meet her gaze. She lingered in the kitchen, rinsing a glass. I passed by, slow, waiting for her to say something. She didn't. I wanted to knock on her door later, just once. To ask if she meant to draw those lines on purpose. To tell her I wasn't him. That I wasn't anyone she had to fold away like an old photograph. But I stood in the hallway with my hand near the frame, and never touched it. The distance stretched. Days blurred. She stopped humming. I stopped waiting for it. When she did finally sit across from me again, tea between us, the house unusually quiet, she smiled too brightly, as if she'd been practicing. "I should be going soon," she said, eyes fixed on her cup. "I've stayed long enough." The words landed heavy, even though I'd known they were coming. I opened my mouth, but nothing formed. Just the sound of my own breathing filling the silence. Later, I typed out a message. 3 words. "Don't leave yet." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered. Then I set the phone down, unsent. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. Her last night came quicker than I was ready for. The suitcase sat by the door again, this time zipped shut. The house was quiet after dinner. My wife had gone upstairs early, leaving us in the kitchen with the soft hum of the fridge and the smell of dish soap lingering. She was drying a plate when I finally spoke. "You don't have to leave so soon," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands tightened around the edge of the counter. She set the plate down. Looked at me for the first time in days without that practiced smile. "Yes, I do." The answer wasn't sharp. It was tired. Worn. I leaned against the counter, searching for something that didn't sound foolish. "You've been different." Her laugh was short, brittle. "And you haven't?" Silence stretched. She gripped the towel tighter, then set it aside like surrender. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said quietly. "Not you. Not her. Especially not myself." The honesty of it sat heavy between us. I should have let it go. But something in me pushed forward anyway. "You think I haven't noticed?" "The way I stopped myself." Shook my head. "Forget it." "No," she said quickly. "Say it." Her eyes were fixed on me, steady but trembling at the edges. "The way you look at me," I whispered. The words were fragile, almost breaking as they left. Her face softened, then tightened, like she'd been waiting to hear it and dreading it all at once. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them. Took a step closer, slow, like testing water. "I'm not supposed to," she said. Barely more than a breath. "I know." We stood there, the kitchen dim, the clock ticking too loud, the whole house above us sleeping. She reached out, fingertips brushing the cuff of my shirt again, like before. This time she didn't pull away. "It would be easier if you were cruel," she said. "If you gave me a reason not to care." I swallowed hard. My chest felt too small. "And if I can't?" Her eyes closed for a moment, like the words cost her something to hear. When she opened them, there was no performance left. Just her. Neither of us moved further. The distance stayed, but so did the honesty. She let her hand drop, exhaled slowly. Then we'll just have to live with it. There was no kiss. No collapse into arms. Just a quiet nod from me, a faint, exhausted smile from her. And then, softer than anything else that had passed between us, she whispered, "Okay." She left that morning before I was awake. No note, no goodbye, just the hollow sound of the front door catching softly on its frame. For weeks, the house felt uneven without her. My wife's laughter filled the rooms, but the silences had grown louder, heavier. I'd still catch myself listening for her footsteps in the hall, or looking at the porch at dusk, expecting her to be there. I never said anything. Life doesn't pause for unfinished sentences. Months passed. Routine returned, or at least the shape of it did. Work. Laundry. Dinner at the same table. Then, one morning, 8:47 a.m., exactly, I walked into a small cafe I hadn't been to in years. And there she was. Sitting by the window. Black coffee in front of her, steam curling. A book open but unread. She looked up at me, startled at first, then softening. The same way she had when I first came home to find her in my kitchen. "Daniel," she said, and the way she spoke my name felt unchanged. We didn't rush into anything. That wasn't us. We met for coffee again, then tea. Sometimes we sat on a bench outside the library and said almost nothing. Just shared the air, the silence, the space that once had been too dangerous to name. She told me more about her son, about the mistakes she carried. I told her things I hadn't told anyone, the unsent messages, the nights I stayed awake just listening for signs of a life bigger than mine. We didn't try to make it perfect. We let it be what it was, two people who had already been through enough to know that love doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, sits quietly beside you, and waits to see if you'll notice. Now, sometimes she hums again, the same tune I heard when she dried a plate that first week. Sometimes we argue about nothing, then laugh about how pointless it was. Sometimes she folds my sleeve back for me, still. It isn't grand. It isn't dramatic. It's better. One evening, sitting on the porch as the light faded, she leaned her head against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, I said, "You remember that night, when you almost asked me something?" Her eyes flicked up, amused. "I never did I?" I shook my head. "No. You didn't have to." She smiled then, not wide, not loud. Just the kind of smile that said she finally felt seen. And I realized that was our answer. The one we'd both been carrying, waiting for. Some stories don't need to be finished. They just need to be lived. Sparkles, did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?